Hi there and welcome.
You're listening to Animals and Us, Voices of a New Paradigm.
My name is Avantika, and I'm a researcher exploring animal consciousness, environmental sustainability, and planetary health. I want to help bring animal perspectives to the table and transform our relationship with the natural world.
And I'm Barbara. I'm an animal communicator and retired veterinarian. My true passion is exploring the hearts and souls of animals and helping people come to a much deeper understanding of who the animals truly are at their core.
This podcast is for anyone who loves animals and nature and has an interest in their own personal and spiritual development. We'll bring you powerful conversations with fascinating people about animal and nature sentience, consciousness, and communication.
Thank you so much for joining us on this journey of love, respect, understanding, and care for the fellow beings who share our beautiful Mother Earth with us.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of Animals and Us, Voices of a New Paradigm. Today, we're so happy to introduce you all to a brilliant researcher, a sweet, kind, and passionate human being, and someone who's been an inspiration to me ever since I met her a few years ago. We have on the show today with us Vanessa Wijngaarden, a social anthropologist who studies how people live in different communities. She has spent time in these communities. Social anthropologists, they spend their time observing, talking to people, and participating in daily activities with them, with the goal to understand everything about a group, how they behave, what they believe, and how they organize their lives. Vanessa is also a filmmaker. She has spent a few years in East-African Maasailand, which we'll hear more about today. Her films have explored the lives of the indigenous Maasai communities she has lived with, and she's created these documentaries that have earned global recognition, including awards like Best Documentary Short Film and Best Cinematographer Award. Her experiences in the last few years have also cultivated an interest and passion in engaging with animals and studying our ability to intuitively communicate with them. Some of you may know about the academic symposium that I helped to plan, and that focused entirely on animal communication. And Vanessa was part of the program planning committee this year and also presented at the event. So Barbara and I have had the chance to get to know her better throughout that process. And I've had the privilege and the great honor of working closely with her and seeing how her mind works, seeing all the input she had, and just getting to know her over that time. So we're so excited to have her here today to talk more about her research and the work that she's about to embark on that will focus on intuitive interspecies communication. Vanessa, thank you so much for being with us here today. Welcome.
Thank you, Avantika. That's such a lovely introduction. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And I know there's so much more I could have said. It was just a brief intro, and I'm really hoping that we can, through our questions today and through our conversation, get to know you really well. So Vanessa, just to get us started, can you share a bit about how you became interested in intuitive interspecies communication specifically, or telepathic communication with animals?
Well, I think this has been something that was there on some level, maybe all my life. When I was a little child, I used to go out. There was a small field in I lived in a small town, and there was a field where they're supposed to build something new, some new buildings, but it wasn't used for a while. So you had all the wild herbs and all the insects there, and I used to go there, and I can remember I spent the whole day there and just looking at the animals and being with them and being in touch in some way. And also when I was, maybe there were cats or dogs we met on the way, then people always said, "Oh, they really like you. They really, they really come to you." And I never knew why, but I always felt really blessed by that. It was like yeah, something that I was really honored. And I think that that also says something about how I felt about animals already when I was a child. So when I started to do research and to travel more, I had the opportunity to meet a lot of different animals, like in Africa, much bigger animals, and yeah, more in the wild. And I can remember we were always looking for animals and trying to make contact with them. And at that point, it was not yet the intuitive interspecies communication, I think, as I know what is possible now, but there was already that kind of yeah, that kind of connection. For example, also when I used to go in the forest, I always used to find the deer. Because I can sort of feel where they are. And if they have passed somewhere, the place feels slightly different. So I could read the tracks, of course, and then I would always find them. And this was something that for me it came very, very naturally, and I love to get close to them. But of course, they would always run away. Once I would meet them, they would run, and not far. They don't run they don't run a long distance, but they would hide a little bit somewhere, and then I would of course easily find them again. But I also didn't want to disturb them, so we would have this understanding of they know me after a while, and then we would have this understanding of some distance. And then since I started doing the intuitive interspecies communication and learn from different teachers, I found out how much more is possible and how much closer we can get to each other. And that has, of course, been amazing for me.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. That sounds like a really lovely childhood. I wish that more of us had childhoods like that, actually. I wish I did. I think I would have developed an appreciation and admiration for animals and just the natural world perhaps much earlier in my life. And I hope that all kids get a chance to do that today. When you started I didn't even go into in my introduction, I didn't even mention about your academic history and background. But when you started your postgraduate studies, tell us if animals were part of your research at that point, and if there was a specific moment or experience that led you to diving into research about that.
Yeah, already in my master's research, when the first time I did fieldwork was also the first time that I went to the African continent. This was about human-wildlife conflict. So this is when I started to live in Taita and in Maasai with local people, and I looked at their interactions with the wild animals and also at the role of nature conservation in it. And it was also inspired by political science there. So it was already focused on animals in that way. So after the human-wildlife conflict, after that research and those case studies, I went to do my PhD, and I continued to stay in Maasai areas, but now instead of Kenya, in Tanzania. And of course, Maasai live very much with animals. They are cattle people, so they live with cows and goats and sheep. And they have other animals around as well, of course, and they have certain interactions with the wildlife as well. But my research at that point was focusing more on tourism, because they had proposed to me that they saw tourism was the only way for them to solve the human-wildlife conflict that they were often engaged in, because they felt if we can get an income from the wildlife, then we can actually live in peace with them, and not be in this kind of competitive kind of way of life in which they're more worried that and this happens, of course, a lot as well, that the cows get eaten by the lion, that the leopard comes and kills all the goats. So people proposed that as a solution, and I wanted to look into it. So that was more focused on tourism. And when I finished the PhD, I went traveling for a while. I made a trip with a small horse in Mongolia. So we went, only the two of us, and it was quite wild. We had to cross like big mountain ranges and big rivers, and I've been in the wild, but never in this kind of environment, and also to be all alone. And it was always my responsibility to also take care of him, because if I bring him to a place in the river where it's actually difficult for him to cross, we're both going to be in trouble, and he's going to be having difficulty to keep swimming with me and all our things. And it was a very intense time to be with him, and we had a lot of communication also. So I've always felt that his character was also very, very good. He must have been very happy at the place where he was, because I was sometimes really stressed under the circumstances. I mean, it was already, there's ice in the morning on the tent. There are bears, there were wolves sometimes coming at night. And then I would listen to him eat. And if we would stop eat and make this kind of snorting sound that horses make, when they feel that there's some trouble, then I would wake up out of the tent and make the fire, because often then it means that there's some wolves. They used to come very close sometimes. And if they catch him, it's not only my friend, but also that probably I will die out there, because it's very difficult for me to reach any place. I would be lucky if I would be found by one of the herders, no? So he was, I felt that it was not always easy for him to be with me, because I was also a human, and there were wild horses also, and he never tried to run away. Also, when it was dangerous, he would just hide behind me. And so in the end, I brought him back to the place where he came from, to the herd. So that was one of the things that happened before. So this happened in Mongolia, and then afterwards I traveled to Nepal and India, and I wanted to write a research proposal to continue my studies, like to do a postdoc. And I saw the film The Animal Communicator, with Breitenbach. Yeah. And when I saw that, I thought, that makes me think, of course, of my time in the forest with the deer, and my time with Uho, the horse, and just the experiences of my life. But I was feeling sort of incredulous that it could be so clear, that it could be so detailed, and so that you could communicate in that kind of way. I was fascinated, and it was sort of like a dream. If this could be possible, that would be amazing. That would be so great. But I was also like, really, can this be? And so I decided that I wanted to then design a research project to work with these animal communicator people. Because as an anthropologist, that is the way I try to understand things. I live with the people and take part in what they are doing, and try from the inside out to understand what it is like, so that I can also, if I can also feel it in my body. If another human can do it, then I should also be able to do it, because I'm also a human. So this is the way, from the inside out, to learn new things. And it got accepted at the University of Johannesburg. And then I moved there, and I started doing the research.
Unbelievable. I mean, you say your horse was called Brave. You're brave. I can't even begin to imagine going across Mongolia alone on a little horse in the middle of nowhere. That's phenomenal. How did he get out of the mud that time? If he was struggling and he was up to his waist in mud, how did he get out of there?
Yeah, he would really like collect all the energy, and then with all, he would make jumps. So it's almost like, I don't know, you can almost think like a frog, no? To make all the energy and then jump and try to get to the next thing. He was amazing. I'm still thinking of him quite a lot. I should send you a photo or show you a photo.
Yes, please do.
Yeah.
Yes, what an incredible guy he was. Yeah. And what led you to make such a trip in Mongolia all by yourself. Why would you do that?
Well, I do like that sort of thing. I think since like 99, in the year 99, I started traveling for the first time, and I went first to Australia, and I spent a lot of time in the bush. At that time with a guy, and we spent a lot of time with the animals, and it was amazing to see all the nature places. And we had nothing. We lived off $1 a day, and we hitchhiked everywhere and walked everywhere. We didn't have anything, but I found out that with that I was so happy. I was so happy. We slept on the ground. We didn't have anything to sleep on. We just slept on the ground. We often didn't have food. If we found anything to eat, we would just get it in as soon as possible. We would also catch fish and lizards, and we would eat. And but I felt really free and really blessed and happy and connected. And then I met some of the Aboriginal people there, because at some point we were in the middle of the desert, we managed to get a job there. So I was like cleaning, like housekeeping, like cleaning hotel rooms and working in the restaurant and that sort of thing, and working in the small shop. And the Aboriginal people used to come to that place. Sometimes they used to come in a big truck, like just standing in the truck, like cattle, no? And they would come there and they would want to buy things. And our boss prohibited us from selling things to them, because of course the Aboriginal people coming there, they came from the reserves, and they often were not really properly, as people would think, properly dressed. They would smell very different, and of course they had like tourism there. So for them, they didn't want these people to be in that kind of space. But for us, we could understand, because we were also travelers, often without anything, and we could understand that the next shop is a couple of hundreds of kilometers away. So if you want that thing, you can only get it there, and otherwise you have to travel hundreds of kilometers to get that. So we felt that, well, because it's very remote there, so we felt that, of course, we will give them. So we would actually under the table or hidden, make the transaction for them and get them the things that they were looking for. And that caused them actually to invite us to the reserve. So they asked us if we want to come. And then they said that, okay, we will tell you the Dreamtime story that will lead you the way through the landscape to find it. And if you find it, you can stay. You're free to stay with us. So they told us the story about how the kangaroo, the giant kangaroo, is hopping through the landscape, and how it meets the snake, and a whole story. And through that story, you can find, you have to see in the landscape where you see the footprints from the kangaroo, where the water holes are, and the snake, this long, high ridge that is moving through the landscape. So, and they helped us, of course, they helped us to interpret, because we were also very new to this kind of thing. So they did help us, but it was still exciting, because to find a way all alone and in the bush, so far, it took 2 days to get there, and you don't know if you're on the right way. So it was quite exciting. And also at that time, I don't know if that's still the case, but we were told, I don't know if it is, I believe that it is true, at least for that area at the time, that if any Aboriginal people would find us on their land, they were allowed to spear us actually in the leg. Because we are not, it's their land, and we are not supposed maybe to be there. So we were, it was a quite exciting thing, but we finally found the place, and also the people that actually invited us and who would welcome us. And it was at a little waterfall. It was called, in the local language, it was called Sweetwater. And we stayed there for a while. And this was actually when I started to see that I wanted to study anthropology. So this was one of the reasons why, because before I was supposed to study physics because I was really good at it. I had very good results, and they invited me at university when that I could start to study there. And for me, I wanted to travel first, so I went to travel. And then when I found, these Aboriginal people, and also in Indonesia, also a small village where I stayed for a while, I changed my mind, and I felt like, no, I'm not going to work in a laboratory. I need to be with people and be in the nature.
Wow, your story is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I've traveled some to other countries, but nothing like you've done. It's just incredible that you could make all these connections and do these things that are so out of the norm. And what a blessing that you were with the Aboriginals and found your true calling. So you must have learned an incredible amount from those people, the about the bush, about the animals, and the dream time, and all of that. It must have been phenomenal.
Yeah, it was really amazing. It's I mean, at that time we just scratched the surface. It was just a little taste of what was there. But what I remember most is like also the warmth or the connection that was there. And I was really very, how can I say that? What's the right word? Because the Aboriginal people in Australia get, at that time, and I think it's still true, they get treated so badly. And we often saw them when we were in the city, and they were living in the park and being really drunk and beaten up often, and also having a lot of violence between themselves. And it was really showing that they're really struggling so much, and they were really looked down upon and treated in a very, very bad way. And this is the people of the lost generation. It is the people that were stolen from the parents, and that grew up in this really detached and horrible way. And then for them to receive us, like a European and an Australian, my boyfriend at the time was an Australian guy, white people, and with such warmth and such connection, it was very healing for me, and I felt so overwhelmed by this kind of goodness and forgiveness, and that they're willing even to share their wisdom about things. And it was very, it really touched me a lot.
I can only imagine. And it seems like the history of the Aboriginals and other indigenous people isn't so different from the Native Americans, you know, where I live. It's pretty horrendous history. But what a tremendous blessing that you were received so beautifully. So there's something special about you that allowed that to happen. Really, it's amazing. So what
Mhm.
did you learn in all these travels? What did you learn about people's connection with animals and their own way of intuitive communication with animals? What was that for you?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's very different in different places. When I think, for example, recently I've done research, for example, in Zimbabwe and in South Africa and Namibia, so more in that southern part of Africa, and in Botswana a little bit as well. And people have, I don't know, a multiplicity. I don't know. That's a big one. They have like people have very varied relationships with animals, and also with different animals. Maasai relationship with the cows is so different from their relationship with the leopard. And the dog is a completely different creature in their constellations again. And then sometimes the same animals have such a different position. One of the things that really struck me, I was about 2 years ago, I was in the Okavanga Delta for the first time. And it was amazing to me because in Kenya and Tanzania, people have war with the elephants. They do, even if there is in some places also a spiritual connection, but on the material level, they have war with the elephants. Elephants kill people and people kill elephants. So there is a lot of pain there. There has been a lot of poaching. The elephants are traumatized and also want to defend themselves. And the people are also, because the people that get that are in trouble there, like with the elephants, they are people that live in mud huts, and their mud huts gets completely destroyed by the elephants, no? And maybe your wife or your children are inside. So people are also really really worried and really scared, and also they are really fighting. And it was always, if you, for lions and leopards, you can be okay if you meet them in the bush. But for an elephant or a buffalo, you really are in trouble, and you have to be really, it's very, very dangerous. So you have to be careful. And there's also, you have to sometimes also make yourself big and have that kind of, I don't know how to say that, but non-peaceful relationship. And then when I went to the Okavanga and I came in touch with the Khoisan there, and the way the people there stay with the elephants is a completely different story. Also with the lions, there is still some. I saw with the Khoisan, the people that are living in these areas, they still have some. They, for example, would set parts of the bush on fire if the elephants get too close, or keep fires in order to keep the lions away from the places where they stay. So they also do have this sort of way, like, because if you're really living with dangerous animals, you also have to think about that you need to have certain agreements with them. And so the communication was not always maybe on the level that we think about when we think about IIC, or when we think about because there is how can I explain that? There are different also material realities going on. It's the same, I think, as when you're able to communicate with people. It doesn't mean that you agree with each other. I think this is the way to understand that there can still be conflict or resources, or the one person wants something and the other person doesn't want that. So you do also other things in order to live together. But the wonderful thing that I saw is that there, with the elephants and the lions, I could camp with a little tent. Just a little ground tent, like a little hiking tent, 1 kilogram. I normally carry it. I carried it on the horse. I got it for the horse ride. No? 1 kilogram lightweight tent, camping on the ground, and the elephants and the lions would come past, and it would be completely okay. It would be fine. There's no this war going on, or there are certain understandings and certain maybe sometimes there's some I don't know, conflict is a big word, but there's some negotiation about the spaces and about those sort of things. But it is nothing like what I saw in East Africa, where I couldn't imagine doing something like that. I felt that, wow, here I can just be in my small tent, and the lions come past and the elephants come past. They come to smell the tent, and it's okay. It's all fine. We are in peace with each other. We don't need to harm each other in any way. And it's very amazing.
Wow, that's so incredible. And I wrote 2 books about elephants, and what they've told me is that a lot of this animosity toward people is because there's animosity on the part of the people, which goes to the elephants, and then it latches onto them, and it's this vicious cycle. So what you're saying is that's really true. If the people could hold peace in their hearts and love and honor and respect their relationship with these animals, the animals would then do the same. And it seems like, especially in the Okavango, and when you say Khoisan people, you mean Bushmen, right? That's what most
Yes.
people. So the relationship is so dependent on the attitude of the people and their behavior. That's fantastic. Yeah,
Yeah.
if only people could integrate intuitive communication, how different would the world be, you know?
Definitely. And I think it will bring a whole different kind of attitude, because I think in a lot of the human world, there is still the feeling that maybe it is the human's right to own places or to control spaces. And when we start to communicate with animals in that intuitive way, and start to see how they are also persons, how they're also just having a life, or they also just trying to make a living or trying to survive, it becomes a very different constellation, because then it becomes like a community that you are having together. And that it's, of course, there will not always, we will not always all agree with each other, but it will be the goal also for everyone to live together and to have a share of what is there, and to cooperate to make things work, instead of this kind of very dominant way of coming, okay, which comes from the idea. And this is something that in my work I also try to write about and make people aware of, that this idea that the environment, it's already that word, not the environment, is somehow a passive outside kind of stage for us as humans to walk on. This is a very this idea is very culturally specific and comes really from a certain time and space. And most people in the world, over history and even still now, I think, in the world, see that differently. They see it as, okay, we are in relationship with everything that is alive around us, and there is no so to say, agent, the human, and then a structure, which is nature. But nature is alive like us and is communicating with us all the time as well. And then you want to also live in a completely different way.
Wow. Well, Vanessa, you've taken us. I mean, I've had my eyes just glued to the screen and my ears just like fully taking everything you've shared with us into, just digesting it all. I feel like I just traveled the world with you, from your stories from Mongolia to Australia to Africa. Like, it's just been such a pleasure hearing more. And I know Barbara and I have been looking forward to this for a long time, because we've just had so many questions, and you've done so much over the last few decades that I know it's impossible to sum up in a few minutes or even in an hour. But thank you so much for sharing with us how your journey started and how it evolved. And it sounds like it was so organic, just was a lot about you listening and paying attention to what things interested you and fueled, the passion inside you and made you curious, I think. And I think curiosity is probably something that's very important in doing research, right? When you're committing your life and your livelihood to understanding something, you want to care about it and be interested and excited about it. So I guess I'd love to jump ahead a little bit in your journey and ask you now. I mean, so much time I think has passed probably from your experience in Mongolia and your experience, first starting to experience intuitive communication with animals, and where we are today is probably a very different world and probably very different academic world. So I would love to hear about, I mean, there's so much to talk about. There's so much to talk about, so much to ask you about. Maybe tell us a little bit about this special issue of the research journal Organizational Ethnography that you're co-editing, And for our audience, that may not know what that even means or what the significance of that is, tell us a little bit about the special issue that's in the works and going to be prepared and published next year that's focusing entirely on interspecies communication. What is that about? Why is it significant? And what are you hoping it will do for not just the academic community, but the non-academic community as well? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. A special issue, it is in academia, we have journals that are often dedicated to specific research fields. And in those journals, sometimes there can be a special issue or a special edition, which means that the whole journal, for that, most of the time they come out 4 times a year. So for that quarter of the year, the whole journal is about one specific subject. And together with my co-editor, Sarah Abbott, we managed to create a proposal that got accepted to have a special issue that is only on IIC. And this is very special because until now, there has been very little research that has been published on IIC. And a lot of the colleagues have also said that it has been really difficult for them to get their research published because often IIC is not taken seriously.
Actually, Vanessa, maybe we can just say what IIC is. I think we mentioned it a few times already, but maybe we can just say what that is.
Yeah, so intuitive interspecies communication. So the special issue is entirely dedicated to intuitive interspecies communication. And in our academic language, we are often abbreviating that. So we are calling it now IIC, but it stands for intuitive interspecies communication. And so now we have a whole journal issue that is dedicated to that subject. That means that there will be about 8 articles that are approaching the subject from different, we're trying to get contributions from different parts of the world, from researchers from different kind of disciplines, from different people working with different kind of animal communicators and maybe also with indigenous peoples that are using intuitive interspecies communication, also with professional animal communicators. So we're trying to sort of catch this variety or give a glimpse into this variety in some way. And a lot of as I said, a lot of researchers have complained that it's difficult to get their studies on intuitive interspecies communication published because often it's not taken seriously. So people, the reviewers, the colleagues that are looking at those articles and deciding if this is something that should be published or not, they might be really skeptical of something like that. Now, what we're seeing now is because there have been a few publications that it's sort of opening up, because if there are more publications that are mentioning these practices and taking them seriously, then the next researcher can build on this conversation and get more legitimacy in the conversation with other researchers. And then this conversation can become more serious. We can talk more about details and about what kind of approaches would we like to use. Do we have to develop new methods? One of the questions that I'm asking is, for example, how can we work with animals as complete research participants when we're doing academic work? And should the social sciences, which is about social interaction, should they not also include non-human animals, the animals that are around us? Because as humans, we are not the only ones who are social beings. Animals are also social beings, and actually plants are also social beings. And there might be a lot more of nature that we could consider in that we have actually a social relationship with. Then the social sciences would need to transform itself in an important way. So this is some of the things that I'm working on and that we are discussing in such a special issue where we bring like different case studies together and for the researchers, academics, that to have something to build upon, but it can also help for people who are maybe practicing intuitive interspecies communication to see that, there are groups of scientific academic people who are actually researching this, taking it seriously, also doing this. So I can be more free to speak about this with my neighbor or with my people at work, because this is a thing. This is not just me making up something in my mind.
Could you just clarify the journal you're talking about, the Journal of Ethnography, right? Could you explain what ethnography means?
Yeah. So the journal that we're publishing in, it's called the Journal of Organizational Ethnography. Ethnography is actually that is the research method that is being used by anthropologists a lot, and also by other disciplines, which is that research method where you are working from the inside out. So as an anthropologist, when we practice ethnography, we are living with the people that we're doing research with. So in that way, by feeling it in your body, by staying there for a long time, by making real relationships, real friends, and by allowing yourself also to be changed in the process of research, this is how we are trying to create new information, to understand what is going on.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
Wow, well, what an exciting time to be here. And I just kind of came on board very recently, but it's really exciting to see where things are going. And just in the few years that I've been involved with this and learning about intuitive interspecies communication, I can already see that progress, and I can already see the things that are opening up. And Vanessa, I mean, one of the things I wanted to ask you was, have there been challenges and setbacks for you? You talked a little bit about that difficulty sometimes with getting things published and being taken seriously when talking about communicating telepathically, intuitively with animals in the academic community. What's that been like for you? And then I would love to hear about the new grant. So we can transition into that as well. But maybe first, I'll ask you, what's it been like as, a scientist, as an academic person, as a scholar studying this? Has that come with challenges for you?
Yeah, so I have heard more of challenges from colleagues than I have experienced them myself. I think I've been blessed or lucky or guided somehow. From my side, I see that if I'm in an academic context, I noticed that sometimes people think what I'm doing, the research that I'm doing, or the way that I'm thinking is weird or different. But for me, that is not so much of a problem, because I'm an anthropologist. So my work has changed my way of thinking for many, many years. So there are many, many subjects and ways of looking that I'm having, the cosmology that has developed inside me, the way I think the universe works. It's definitely not a copy paste, and it often doesn't even align with the dominant scientific ways of thinking. So I'm someone that in my work, I also like to challenge the underlying foundations of science, because I also have a background in political science and international relations, and I can see how some of the ways in which academia and science has worked has also had very political effects. For example, by saying that, okay, what the research that we are doing and the information that we give you, it is objective. It is about reality. We describe how the world really is. And then what you think as maybe an indigenous person or as maybe some other kind of minority. That is just your belief. That is, so there is this claim to truth in the way science and academia has been used. And this is, in a way, also a political kind of constellation, because if I'm able to say what is true and what is not true, I can exert a lot of influence. So it's a very powerful step. And in the secularization, I think that the spirituality got taken out of science. And this is something that I'm now thinking about and working on, because I believe that a lot of the spiritual knowledge is also the wisdom of people. And academia and science should also be the wisdom of people. And when we actually ask science about whether it says something objective or whether it speaks the truth, then when you have the philosophy of science, is like the science about science, it actually says like, no, we don't say anything about truth. We have nothing that is sure. We're just making theories. And our theories, they are there as long as we don't have anything better. It's the best fitting thing, but it's not perfect. It's never perfect. It always evolves. So in the day-to-day use of science, it's often treated as if it is objective and if it is saying something about facts. But in the deeper logic of science, actually, it is a really good thing to think about the underlying assumptions, to think about what kind of things we are taking for granted, maybe just because we're from a certain cultural background, and to question that. And this is, for me, one of the things that anthropology does, because it brings in a totally different cultural perspective. And when you get totally into that different cultural perspective, you can see what is not working in your own perspective or the dominant perspective, because now you get a chance to put it into perspective. You get a chance to see it from another angle. So I'm just thinking where your question was going.
No, that's totally fine. That's great. I mean, no, it's fine. You answered the question, but like what you've just shared is so powerful because it makes you think about the role of science and research, the power of science and research, what it is, what it could be, what it should be. And that, science and research, as much as it tries to be objective and the people who are conducting it are trying to be objective, it's still relative and contextual and situated in certain times and spaces. So that's really important for all of us to hear, whether you're someone who works in an academic context or you're not, and you're someone on the receiving end. It's so important to be critical and reflective of what we're receiving and being told is facts and truth, So thank you so much for sharing that. And I love that your own experience has been different maybe than your colleagues, and that it sounds like there's a level of conviction in your perspectives, because that is the personal, that is your lived experience. It's based on what you have been through and based on what you have experienced firsthand. And so what you do day in and day out is reflective of that and not what someone else tells you it should be or could be. I'm so excited to talk about this next topic, which is this grant that you've just received titled Animal Communicators, Intuitive Communication as a Key to Dialogic Multispecies Methods. So I've read that this is a daring and innovative research project that's all about exploring intuitive communication with animals in various communities. And the goal is to come up with practical ways to break down the traditional divisions and divides between nature and culture, nature and humans, and to figure out how researchers can actually work with animals as subjects, as partners, as participants in studies. So Tell us about this project. You're going to be traveling to 6 different countries and engaging with indigenous partners and knowledge holders and being back immersed in those communities, I think, which is where you love to be and where you thrive. So tell us a little bit about the project, about the plan, and also about the big picture, like why this project? I know it's been a work in progress for a few years. So we'd love to hear, what kept you going and what are you hoping to accomplish from it?
Wow, that was a lot of questions in one.
I
I'll
know.
try to bring it all together. Yeah, but it relates also to what we spoke about before, and it's really nice how you formulated it. Also, for me, I think I'm not shy in this academic context because I feel that sort of shaking up those foundations is what makes me a good and valuable academic. So I'm not worried about that. And also, therefore, not worried if maybe I don't get something funded straight away. And it takes a couple of years and a couple of revisions because in that time, I'm also growing and I'm also thinking and it becomes actually better. So I like to also be in conversation with academics that don't agree with me or get those critical feedbacks. And I think you're right that because I have those because it's rooted in my own experience, and I know also because I've been living in so many different cultures and communities that the dominant Western experience is not the most prominent one in the world. So I'm also not intimidated by that in that way. And I feel like I'm only one person. So I don't have this kind of professional identity and then an identity at home or what I'm doing at home. Because one of the things which is really interesting, which I do want to put in here, is that when I present at maybe conferences, sometimes about intuitive interspecies communication, and that I'm using this in my work in order to get information and the voices of the animals into the work. That then there's some very critical questions sometimes in the audience from colleagues. But it's the same colleagues that are sort of in that way, like strongly critical or even offended that I'm doing this, that come to me in the coffee break to tell me about their personal experiences with this kind of things, or that their wife is doing this sort of thing. So they have this kind of separation between their professional self and what they should say in public and how they should react to this in public and their own personal experience. And it's not integrated with each other. And for me, I don't want this kind of way. I'm only one person. So if I'm doing my research, I'm the same person as when I'm doing other things. And when I'm presenting, I have to be the same person. And I think this can also make science stronger, that we can be real, that we can be true about everything that we're feeling and that we're experiencing as humans in it. So now this is also one of the fundaments, so to say, in the upcoming project that you asked about. So it's very great project. It is 2.3 million euros, so it is very big. It is for 5 years. And there will be several PhD students, 2 or 3. I'm still looking into that, and a postdoc involved. So that means people at different stage of their studies, they're going to in different stage of their research career, they're going to help me. So it's not only me, we're going to be a team. And some of those people are going to maybe come from indigenous backgrounds. Some of these people are going to come from, it's a transdisciplinary project, so they're going to come from other kind of disciplines like biology. Others going to come from social sciences. Hopefully I will have at least one person who is coming from the local communities in Africa that we're working with. There's also some indigenous European focus involved. So hopefully someone can come from there, the Sami in northern Finland, who are the reindeer herders. So it's trying to bring together people from very different backgrounds, with different scientific academic backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, to come into conversation and to work together with 6 animal communicators, also from different places in Europe and in Africa, and to really also break that kind of hierarchy between, okay, this is the researcher and this is the informant. So this is the person who brings us the information. And then as a researcher, I'm going to analyze that information and write something about these people. It's not set up like this. It is like, okay, we are researchers, we're trying to learn something. So we have to sort of come down and try to understand something that we don't know anything about or know little about. So as researchers, we are a little bit like children. No, we have to learn something new and we don't know yet. So we have to be quiet and listen a lot and try to understand. And the animal communicators that we will be working with, they will also help us with the analysis of our data. So we collect things by recording the communications between them and the animals that they're working with. There's, I think it's 17 species of animals that we're working with, birds and mammals. So we're, because I also like visual methods now, so we are recording that. And then together with them, we will analyze the recordings and say, okay, what is happening here? Can you tell me something about, how this comes to pass? Should I understand it like this? And if I've written something, I can go back to them and say, did I understand this well, or should I see it differently? And also, let them analyze maybe when the researchers are trying to do communications. And are saying what they are experiencing or what they are hearing from the animal. So it tries in that way to break down a lot of hierarchies. And the idea of what we are aiming for is to make animals, to create methods to make it possible that animals can be full research participants in our studies. So especially in the social sciences, but actually also maybe in the natural sciences, because that kind of division between social sciences and natural sciences is also based on that kind of idea of, okay, we have human agents and then we have the rest of nature, which is sort of according to mechanical laws functioning like that. So I'm also questioning that, like saying like, these social sciences and natural sciences, maybe they are integrated with each other, and then we have to find common ways of talking to each other. So it is, it's an ambitious thing, and I'm really, really excited and pleased that the European Union has decided to fund it, because it also means that they are open to take this kind of communication, this kind of interaction with animals, the personality and being of animals also seriously. So it's a very big step.
Wow. Well, I'm really excited that you're sharing this with our audience today so that they can see what's coming up, because I know the research process takes time. It doesn't happen quickly, right? It's like you said, this is a 5-year project. So by the time you publish your findings, it will be at least a few years from now. So I'm happy that we were able to share with people that this is in the pipelines, it's coming. This is what's happening now. And if you just even think about that timeline, when you started conceiving of this idea, when you started putting this proposal together like that, it takes, that's probably like a full decade. And I could probably speak on Barbara's behalf, or maybe Barbara, you can share, a few years ago when we met, you probably could have never imagined that this would even be a possibility. So.
Oh my God, Vanessa, this is so fabulous. And how you're bridging so many worlds here, and just the fact that you have the confidence and the boldness to do this kind of work that you're doing. It's just extraordinary. When I started doing animal communication so many years ago, there was no way I could ever have imagined something like this. And so it's just I'm just so proud of you and excited, and this is going to be tremendous. I know it is. It's going to give validation not only to animal communication, but to the connectedness of everyone. Different countries, different cultures, animals, and the natural world. It's all so connected, and I think this project is going to give a lot of validity to that concept, which is where we need to go. We really need to go. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and I think that one of the most wonderful things is that it also brings into practice already what it's trying to achieve. Because in the new methods that we are developing, we want to co-create them also together with the animals. So have the animals' voices and their not even just their opinions, but also their say about how they want to do research with us and how we that we how they want to be how and if they want to be part of this, and I think that is very important, that it's not only about animals but that it's also with animals, just like intuitive interspecies communication. We're not saying things about the animals, we're talking with them, and this is what this project is also doing in practice, so that it can show the way of how other scientific projects can then also do that.
Yeah, and in all the interactions I've had with animals, especially the wild ones, they always say they want to work with humans to make this a better place for all of us to live, peace and harmony and compassion and respect, all that. They want to work with us. So I think this is a huge start to that process. Yes.
So Vanessa, we've talked about so much today, and I think we'll definitely have to have you back on here as your work evolves and you start this new journey and this new chapter. Thank you so much for being here today. I feel inspired by your conviction, your curiosity, your desire to stay true to what feels right, to stay on track with what you're passionate about. And I loved you also talked about your approach to research as children, who are asking good questions, who are exploring, who are curious, who are collecting information and making sense of it and building our understanding of the world that we live in. So thank you so much. And before we sign off today, maybe you can let people know where they can find you if they're interested in following your work or reading more about what you've done, what you're about to do, and might want to connect with you. Where can they find you?
I do have a website. It is my name, actually. And I know my name is a little bit difficult for some people because it's originally a Dutch name. So it is www.vanessa, and then I think it's Wijngaarden. Also, how can I say that? Wijng, it stands, Wijngaarden. You can also find me at the homepage of the University of Johannesburg, where I'm still a senior research associate. It's maybe easy to find me through one of my films, Maasai Speak Back. If you Google that, Maasai Speak Back and Vanessa, probably if you Google Vanessa and Maasai and maybe university, you might already also find the website. So it shouldn't be too hard to find.
Perfect. And we'll make sure that we put all those links in the podcast episode description and on our website so people can find you easily if they're looking for you. Well, thank you so much again for being here. Thank you everyone who tuned into this episode. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. And before we wrap up today, we would like to end with a brief blessing for the animals.
We'd like to end this podcast by taking just a moment to be quiet. And we give thanks and blessings to these amazing animals that we share our lives with. They give us so much and ask for so little in return. We hope that you can keep the animals and all living beings in your heart and in your mind as you go about your day. Thank you so much for being here with us today.